I love my job. And episode 2, round 2, my students asked me to do my first time, and I recorded it and realized after talking to my mom earlier today that I had told the wrong things of my first. So, number 1, my first time flying out of a wheelchair. There is only one of these. Fortunately, this has only happened one time so far, and hopefully it'll never happen again. I generally don't let people push me in my wheelchair because I don't want to fly out of my wheelchair. And there's one rule when people push me in my wheelchair, and the one rule is that when you come to any kind of bump or curb or anything, you hit it straight on and let me pop a wheelie so that I can go over it and the person pushing has to do nothing else. So I went to the Holy Taco Shack in Freiburg with my parents and one of my colleagues, and it was raining, which is like the only condition I let people push me in, or one of the very few conditions. And I said, okay, Chris, this might be the only time you get to push me, so go ahead. And I forgot to tell him this one rule, and it was because I was so focused on the Mexican food, which was really unfortunate because they were gone. They ran out of food. So we were going back to the car, and we had to cross the street, and it had like a 2-centimeter curb, and I saw this, and we got to the street, and I like popped up my wheelie to get ready to go on the street, but I started to go forward, and Chris was like, oh my gosh, she's going into the street, and there's a car coming, so he like speeds across the street, pushed me out of the way, pushed me across the street so I won't get run over. And he sees that there's another curb we're coming up towards, and so he goes to push down on my handles, and I go to pop the wheelie, and the opposing forces launch me into the air, and I went flying out of the chair, hit the ground, and was back in the chair in 2 seconds because Chris and my dad were like right on that. And I got away with just like a bruised knee. First, number 2, my first time teaching is a little more difficult to answer because there's lots of first times teaching that I could say, because like I used to teach Sunday school when I was in middle school, but that's not exciting. I led like a college class discussion one time at university. That's also not particularly interesting. The first time I got to actually teach like a high school classroom of students, I was still in my theory portion of my grad school, and I was just supposed to lead a class discussion, but the teacher I was observing with let me teach her class period 3 times, like the 3 class periods she had. And we got to talk, they were reading Pygmalion, and we got to talk about the connections between Pygmalion, between Eliza Doolittle and between Katniss Everdeen, and that was a super fun lesson. The first time I actually like planned out a lesson, like teaching stuff was when I was student teaching, was my first lesson on To Kill a Mockingbird, I think. Which probably went horribly. Overall, that was not an amazing unit. It didn't go amazingly. It might have been an amazing unit. I had a rough time with it, though. My first time teaching my own classroom, I was at BFA and had this awesome 8-minute lesson planned out because the first day of school is only 8-minute periods. And I started it, and the person who was the encourager for teachers thing, she came in for a surprise observation and totally threw me off, and I was just floundering for 8 minutes, and it was really embarrassing. But fortunately, I recovered from that, and the next day was better. My first time, number 3 on the list, was my first time in Disneyland. I remember distinctly going to Disneyland on a plane, flying on Halloween, because the stewardess was wearing this nasty nose and warts face thing, and I sure hope it was Halloween. But anyways, big memory from my first time at Halloween, or first time at Disneyland, I got walking pneumonia, and I was in 3rd grade, I think. And my mom was like, suck it up, you're in Disneyland. And I was like, I'm so tired and sick and I don't feel good. And it was because I had pneumonia. Final first time is my first time on a plane, which I thought originally was that time going to Disneyland, but my mother corrected me, and apparently the first time I was on a plane, I flew to Colorado to visit family, and I have no particular recollection of this. But that's my first times, and I love my students.